Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to my channel. I am Monet and you're watching Life as Monet. I did not think before I cut this camera on at all. I don't know what this video is going to be about, but why not start with a wrap up? I've read a lot of books. Let me just go through my Goodreads, see what I've read lately and what I want to talk about, because I have read some bangers and I have read some books that I want to bang against the author's head. Okay, so the book that I read most recently was Bias: Uncovering Hidden Prejudice That Shapes What We See, Think, and something else. See, think, and do. 5 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed this book. It was incredibly enlightening. I feel like I am one of the people that are always cognitively aware of my personal biases and where I stand within society. Writing from certain perspectives all of the time lets you know, it makes you more aware of which perspectives or which components of your life may be shaping how you see something. And then I am in a position of leadership and just being the leader of a team or an organization, right? I have to always think about perspectives and how someone might take something or why someone may react to something a certain way, understanding all those outside features. But when reading this book, right, and all the things that I've studied and all the things that I've experienced professionally and just my own personal life, I still was entirely biased. And funny story, don't cancel me because I know how you girls like to tussle. I went to get my eyebrows threaded and I kind of just glanced at the individual who was going to be doing my eyebrows because I was listening to Bias on the audiobook. And towards the end of my appointment, we were having a conversation. I'm not going to say the name of the country because I don't want to give you guys ammo to cancel me with, but as we were having this conversation, this individual is telling me about their master's degree that they have in accounting and how they haven't been in America long, and they're still kind of learning their English before they can go back into the professional accounting field. And I, going off the initial glance, just was like, oh, what part of this particular country are you from? And that is not where this individual was from. They were actually from the country adjacent to it or next to where I mentioned. I know that that sounds very vague, but just go with me here. The country that I just claimed that they were from is next door to their actual country. But I have plenty of people that I've met in my life from this person's actual country. And had I taken the second to really look at this individual before they started doing my service, I would have known that. I would have seen the difference. And it was just like this epiphany moment that I'm listening to a book talking about bias. And the book is literally describing that when we see things as humans, taking in every detail is overwhelming. It's too much. We break things down into bite-sized pieces and then we decipher. We start processing after we've shrunken or compressed this heavy amount of information down to something that we feel comfortable with. Otherwise, we would be constantly overstimulated. And that leads to bias, because when you are in this environment in which your brain compresses everything and breaks it down into categories, then those categories get labels. Then those categories come with prejudice and preferences and opinions. And so walking into the shop, knowing I want to get my eyebrows done, I'm taking in the pricing and just everything that's going on around me. I'm listening to an audiobook. I look at the individual, place them in this region, and then my mind never double checks until I actually stop and look. And I'm like, oh, wow, I would have known that. I know that if I had taken a second. So this book called me out on my prejudice and I forever thank her for it. And this isn't something negative. It's not a negative prejudice. It's just this book is talking about how it's so easy to be biased, unconsciously biased to where you're not aware of it. And I experienced that repeatedly while reading the book. So it's a must read. I don't think that the goal here is for me to just become 100% non-biased or unbiased, because that's impossible to do. The next book that I read recently, right before that, was Stay Awake. This was a sophomore release from the author who wrote The Night Swim. I really enjoyed The Night Swim. I believe I gave it 5 stars. It is one of my favorite audiobooks. Like, the audiobook slapped for The Night Swim. So I was very excited to pick up Stay Awake. This book follows an individual who basically has insomnia. I don't want to say they have insomnia. They forget everything that has happened in their life for the last 2 years every time they fall asleep. And so there becomes this priority to not fall asleep. But they are caught up in this murder investigation, and we are unsure if the individual, the main character that we're following, actually committed this murder because they cannot remember anything that has happened to them. And so we spend the book retracing the last 2 years of their life because they have a complete 2-year gap. And they're going back to old friends and families and apartments and doctor's offices that in their mind they just went to yesterday, but in reality they haven't been to in 2 years. The premise sounds very intriguing. And I think that it fell flat in so many ways. I think that there's just so many components about this story that would not have worked in practice. Like in theory, it sounds good, and I probably would have picked up the book even if Megan had not written it. But the execution, I feel like, is one that would have let me down regardless. And I think that Megan gave it all that she had, okay? She stepped into big shoes, and she tried. And I recognize her for trying, but D-. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I don't own a physical copy. I cannot recommend that you read it. It's just one of those things that sounds good in theory, but even if you take an expert writer, it still just doesn't really work. Then I read I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. This was everything that I expected it to be, and that is not to be disrespectful to Jeanette's experience at all. I just read a lot of trauma-filled nonfictions, and so it's not a new favorite, but I enjoyed getting to know more about her, and I enjoyed her telling the story of insidious grooming and insidious abuse, because her story is not as violent or vulgar as the most like jaw-dropping, gut-turning stories ever. But you start to see this grooming process that her mother has done through like manipulation, and like she's an expert manipulator. And so I enjoyed that there is now a book on the market that talks about abuse that's not so in your face, that doesn't slap you upside the head compared to the more dramatic stories on the shelves. And so with that being said, I would recommend that you read this book. I think that she does a very good job telling her own story, and I think that it's a perfect example of maybe the storm that I went through doesn't seem as violent or brutal or gory as someone else's. However, I still am living with lifelong reverberations from what I dealt with. And that's not to say that what she dealt with was less. It was just, it doesn't present itself in the most common ways. Then I read The Final Strife. I feel like this book was much more than I expected. And so I did not process. I listened to it on audio, and I feel like this is a book that I should have read physically. Again, being biased, I've seen books like this all the time. I kind of put it in this category in my mind of those, you know what I'm talking about, those black books, you know. So I put it in that category in my mind, and so I was like, let me just get the audiobook, and I was listening to it as I was doing things and was very busy. And so by the time that the book was like, oh wow, this is a good book, this is a well-written book, I had to go back and kind of like restart and like give it my real attention and not just something I had on for ambience noise. So I did enjoy this book, but it is a book that I'm gonna go back before the next one comes out, and I'm gonna read it physically and give it the attention that it deserves, because I didn't think she was gonna serve the way she was serving. Then I read Lola and the Millionaires Part 1. This was a book that was sent to me by my friend Alana. It was a banger, 5 out of 5 stars. I am in the middle of book 2. This book took me literally 2 months to read because I was reading it on my Kindle. And I don't do good with ebooks because they always put me to sleep. So I bought this Kindle Oasis, which is fucking expensive. Have you seen the prices of Oasis? Amazon has lost its mind. But bought the Kindle Oasis. I was reading. Then I got so busy with life that whenever I got in the bed to read before I went to sleep, I went to sleep. That is what happened. That is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I could not stay awake. Not because of the Oasis and not because of the book, because the book was good. I was falling asleep in the middle of like threesomes. Okay? Threesomes. It's an entire book about reverse harem. Mid-stroke, I'm dozing. I'm disappointed in myself. I'm disappointed in me. I let me down. I'm reading book 2 right now, and I'm making time throughout my day to read it where I'm actually up and awake before I get exhausted at night, because if I fall asleep during one more kinky scene, I got to go on punishment. We can't keep doing this. The next book I read was The Measure, which I enjoyed because I was interested in kind of like, I had a hankering for a good sci-fi book, and I felt like this one was very original, very intriguing. Is it the best sci-fi I've ever read? No, but I really enjoy premises like this, and so I believe that this is this author's first book. I do own a physical copy. I would recommend that someone reads it. I felt like it was fun. But at some point in the book, it became less sci-fi, more like introspection into humanity. And I know that that's not something that everyone would like. Clara and the Sun is a book that I would say is slightly similar to this, only because Clara and the Sun presents itself as like a sci-fi type of book, but it's really like, again, this introspection into humanity. The Measure did the same thing. So in this book, we're set in our own world, and one night everyone gets these boxes. Literally everyone, everywhere, get boxes. And in the boxes, it has a string, and no one knows what the string means. No one knows where the boxes came from, who put them up there. It could be a conspiracy theory, it could be a Russian operation, it could be a Chinese, and no one knows what it is at all. But then they start to find out that these strings relate to the time you have left to live. And so scientists are running crazy trying to figure out what these strings mean, if they're true, if they really say when you're gonna die. Does the length of the string matter? So while they're in their labs doing their own thing, kids on TikTok going crazy because they're trying to cut it and burn it and slice it, and the string is indestructible, but they're saying that it's made out of entirely normal material. So we follow particular individuals as they deal with the length of their string, whether or not they have a long one or a short one, and how that changes their perspectives on their life, knowing or having a vision of when they're going to die. Bit of a spoiler, the scientists do figure out at some point in the book how long your life is going to be by the measure of your string. They can get it down to within like a decade or so, like you'll die in your 30s or in your 40s, but no one knows how it's going to be. You don't know if you're going to get hit by a bus. You don't know if you're going to get a severe illness. And there are some individuals who decide to not open their box at all. So yeah, I enjoyed it. It was not particularly what I was looking for, but it was interesting. Then I read Upgrade by Blake Crouch, which I did not enjoy. I tried to DNF this book 2 times. This was just not it for me. It was incredibly boring. I had to switch to the audio, and I still DNF the audio. No, I don't know what this was. It probably was something that was just sitting on his laptop, and he was just like, I need a check, I got bills to pay, inflation's high, yeah, I'm gonna publish this. And it was given the maidens. It was given, it was in your hard drive for a reason, maybe. So yeah, I will be unhauling my physical copy of this. Then I read the book of Gothel, and I don't know how I felt about this book. There were so many things that I enjoyed, but it lost my intrigue at some point in the book. The writing style was one that I really enjoyed. It had this Cersei-like element, not in terms of like the character, but how the character is viewed by society, which I really enjoyed. It had a lot of lyrical, mythological writing, similar to Cersei and Spinning Silver. And so if you like those kind of books, you may like this one. But I will say that like I just felt entirely disconnected at like 60% of the book, and my interest just deflated quickly. I don't even think I cared about what happened at the end. Like at that point, I just wanted the book to be over. It had a very strong beginning. Lost me in the sauce towards the middle and the end. Lately, I've been on a bit of a Karen Slaughter kick. that's becoming my girl. Like, we're like this. I read The Good Daughter, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars. It wasn't my favorite by her, but I really enjoyed The Good Daughter. We follow a set of sisters who experienced some very traumatic experiences when they were younger, due to relationships that their father had. He's a defense attorney, and he's known for defending some of the most ruthless criminals there are. And we jump forward into the future where the sisters are now adults, and they're figuring out how to find this balance with each other, also with their father, who kind of has some blame for the trauma that they experienced growing up. But then someone is accused of a crime. Trigger warnings, there is a school shooting in this book, and the family is now caught up in figuring out this story of this school shooting, what led to it, and if the person that they're blaming the shooting on is actually the perpetrator of the crime. And I really enjoyed Karen Slaughter's writing. This is a book that I found comfort in listening to. I really enjoyed just kind of putting it in my ears and doing some cleaning or crocheting or responding to emails. And so I felt like my experience with the book was really good. And it had a very interesting plot. I honestly feel like I would have loved this book if the book I had not read right before it was False Witness. That has to be like possibly my favorite mystery thriller. Yeah, I don't know. Let me sit with that, see how I feel about that. But that book is a banger. Definitely gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And I read it 2 months ago. I read it in July, August, September. Yeah, I read it 2 months ago, and it's feeling like my favorite book. So if you trust my recommendations, just go with it. Just play it in your ears and have an amazing time, because I sure did. Then I read Ship of Destiny, which is book 3 in the Live Ship Traders by Robin Hobb. I really enjoyed this story and this series much more than the Farseer trilogy. However, when I read book 3 in the Farseer trilogy, I thought it would never end. I don't think that there is a book. There's 3 books that, when I think of my journey and my experience reading it, it just feels endless. It's like being stuck in that one class with that long lecture, and the clock is like going so slow. I felt every word on the paper. I felt every sentence. Like every time I turned the page, I just felt burdened and heavy. And I didn't even know if I was questioning whether or not I was a reader. I was questioning whether or not I was a reader. It felt like I was reading one of those encyclopedia books. I was reading a dictionary. Felt like that with the last book in the Farseer trilogy, and that really took the quality of that series down for me. I already was kind of having an okay time. I wasn't having the best time, but book 3 is a tome, and she could have sped that shit up. The second book that I thought would never end is Empire of the Vampire. Did I enjoy it? Kind of. It was a good book. Decent writing. I have no oppositions to that book, other than it took me 3 fucking fortnights to read. It was incredibly long. For no reason. For no reason. I love your world. I like your characters. I don't want to live here. I just want to experience it. I want to come for a visit. And you holding me hostage. I'm being held hostage. I've been taken a prisoner against my will. That is also how I felt about the Ship of Destiny book. It was good. It was good writing. I was proud of Robin Hobb. I now have a newfound respect for Robin Hobb. But when it's time for her to wrap up her stories, when it's time for her to let them go, she holds on. She grips it like a toddler with a french fry. You ever seen a baby hold a Cheeto? That is what Robin Hobb does with the final books in her series. And so going forward, I don't know. It's going to be a while before I read another Robin Hobb, because I wasn't even over how she did me in The Royal Assassin to have gone through Ship of Destiny. I don't forgive her. I'm holding a grudge. Again, good story. So fucking long. Then I read Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter, which also was 5 out of 5 stars. Highly recommend that one. She has a lot of books, so I can't say it was her best work or not. But if the books that I've read from her so far, Pretty Girls and False Witness, baby, she could sign them. Okay, she could sign my hand and I would stamp it right onto the book. Those books, fun time. When I'm looking for a good thriller, and I'm looking for a good mystery, that is what I need. So if you know of any books that hit like False Witness and Pretty Girls, put them down in the comment section below. I want to know them because I'm sick of being led astray. I'm tired of the Alex Michaelides. I'm tired of the Riley Sagers. Help me. Help me. Give me some recommendations. Then I read 8 Perfect Murders, which I felt like it was okay. It gave me like My Lovely Wife or For Your Own Good vibes, and I usually enjoy satire books like that, and so I had a good time reading this book. I don't own a physical copy of it. I believe I checked this one out from the library, so yeah, I don't own a physical copy. However, yeah, I enjoyed it. It's not a favorite, it's not amazing, but I thought it was comical and interesting, even if it was a little bit predictable. Okay, I'm gonna end this video because even though I've read other books that I should definitely wrap up on my channel for you guys, I don't want this video to be a recap of the last 3 months of my life that I've been missing. So thank you, welcome back. I am happy to see you again. I hope you're happy to see me again, and I will see you guys very soon.